Go live.
We have liftoff. Propulsion continues to be normal.
Our chamber pressure looks good.
Doubling up. Roger roll, Atlantic.
Water towers can fly! Yes!
Tango Delta nominal.
Flight down speed off. Bring in, speed off. Off.
Yikes. You bet. Concur. We don't need any more of these.
Hello and welcome to NSF Live, the weekly show where we bring you the news of the week. Let us know that you can hear us in the chat. I should probably have that pulled up. Hopefully somebody else does. I am Stephen Marr. I'm one of the photographers for NASA Spaceflight. And I just want to say I love that intro song.
Oh,
Every
it's
time
so
I hear
good.
it's got such a nice build to it, and then it's like, bam, let's go. Okay, joining me this week, we have reporter and commentator and lots of other jobs here with NASA Spaceflight, Thomas Burghardt. How you doing, Thomas?
I'm good, Steven. How's everybody doing?
Very well. And we have our fleet expert, Gav Cornwell. How you doing, Gav? I don't hear Gav.
Gav is talking while muted.
Oh, boy.
I'm good at this. Welcome! I am doing great when I eventually turn my microphone on. How are you?
Doing good. It's been a good week. I hope everybody in chat, everybody watching today, saw the Inspiration4 mission. We've got that to talk about. Of course, we always have Starship stuff to talk about. And if we get to it, we'll talk about some Mars stuff, some Chinese astronauts stuff. Yeah, lots to go over here. First of all, though, I think it would be good to point out and congratulate and thank our viewers for their contribution Wednesday night to the St. Jude charity drive. Oh my goodness. I like just watching that go up all day. I don't know about y'all, but I was thinking, I know that our viewers are very generous. I was thinking, 5, 10K, that would be awesome. That would be a win.
Right.
But what did we get up to?
So we have the actual numbers here, and if I pull this up, I believe and so it kind of started to trickle up a little bit more after the fact, but the last time we really formally checked it, the NASA Spaceflight channel raised just over $120,000 for the fundraiser, which is just about 30% of the total, which was $416,000 across all the different channels that were part of the fundraiser. Which is just fantastic when you consider most of the rest of it was the official Spacex stream. Yeah, so that was just awesome. And like Steven mentioned, we were off by a couple orders of magnitude with our pre-flight adjustment predictions as to what we were expecting. We're like, oh, 5, 10K would be fantastic. That would blow us out of the water. And we're like 2 hours from launch and we're already in the tens of thousands of dollars. We're like, oh, interesting.
It was funny.
Awesome.
I wasn't on the stream, but I was listening in, and it was funny there at the end. It was like, oh, we're like, what was it, almost 90,000. Hey, I bet we can hit 90,000. And then when we hit that, it was like, I bet we can hit 100, and it just kept going and going. It was so hard to finally end the stream, but it has to end at some point. But thank you so much, everybody, for your generosity. Do we know what the total number is? Towards the $200 million goal. Has anybody seen
I believe they recently updated. I'll pull up the website really quick. I know they don't update it like constantly, but
yeah.
Let's see. Do they have that fundraising total?
While he's looking that up, hey, how about this? How about everybody in chat? If you donated to St. Jude at all during this Inspiration4 lead up, why don't you raise your hand or do something like that? While Thomas.
Okay, so obviously, so half of the $200 million goal comes from Jared Isaacman himself, just writing a $100 million check. And then the other $100 million, they're up to 53, almost 54 million. So they're a little over halfway the second portion of that goal.
Yeah.
And I know the coverage of the reentry and splashdown on the SpaceX YouTube channel will have opportunity for you to donate more. And then I think the fundraising is going to continue long after the flight actually is done. But yeah, there you go. There's that number.
There it is. Okay, cool.
So
I see
so
lots of hands waving in chat. All the
Yeah.
donators.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah, chat's
crazy.
going nuts. Yeah, I saw one scroll by. It said, "I gave my paycheck." Like, that's huge. Like, it doesn't matter what your paycheck is. Obviously, you need that to pay bills. So that's 100% sacrifice right there. That's awesome. All right, yeah. So they're getting really close on the goal. They're 53 million. Awesome. Let's see. So what do we have first? Okay, so Inspiration4. Let's just get right into it. It's the first all-private orbital crewed mission, starring Jared Isaacman, Dr. Cyan Proctor, Haley Arsenault, and Chris Simbrowski. Launched at 8:02 Wednesday night, of course, from Kennedy Space Center.
Yeah, opening of the window, thankfully for us, for those of us who were sitting at the press site, and we were there since we went live around 3:30 in the afternoon, right before the crew walked out, and well, we're glad it went at the opening because that could have become a marathon stream with that 5-hour launch window they had. But I mean, just a picture perfect liftoff right at the opening.
Yeah, and we were there pretty early. I mean, remote setup was early. It was like shortly after sunrise, so I was out there pretty early, and then went out to get a bite to eat and came back at like, I don't know, 2 o'clock. And so we were there, and actually the local Starbucks donated a huge thing of coffee in case we had to go into the night. So that was pretty cool of them to do.
Much appreciated.
Yeah. All right, yeah. So let's see. The first stage, of course, landed on just read the instructions. It was B-1062. It was its third mission. What others? Hit them with it. Hit them with the info, Thomas. What do we got?
1062 had 2 GPS launches prior to the Inspiration4 mission, so this was its first mission carrying humans. Third, drone ship recovery, all missions landing on various drone ships. This one was just read the instructions. The shortfall Gravitas was chilling back in Port Canaveral. Probably go out for the next one. And I don't believe, we're still waiting for both of these ships to kind of show some of their autonomous capabilities that they're supposed to have. Gav, I know they're kind of feeling that out a little bit, and there's some support vessels that are going to be a part of that they need to bring online, right?
Yeah, they've been trialing autonomy, and we know they've done at least sort of 1 or 2 sea trials with a shortfall of Gravitas, and maybe you've just read the instructions. Not immediately sure. But both those drone ships will become autonomous. SpaceX is bringing in new ships to support that autonomy, and there'll be some change. I think we're going to go over that in detail a bit later on, basically.
Sure, and I also, from the internal Dragon feeds, you just see Haley with the biggest smile on her face the entire ascent is just fantastic to see. And that's something we didn't really get to see on some of the NASA missions. We talked about ahead of time how, since it wasn't a NASA mission, they might have a little bit more leeway on what kind of camera views they can show and stuff. Showing the crew during first stage ascent had not happened, at least not live, on any of the NASA missions yet. So that was cool to see.
Yeah,
so it looks like a pretty smooth ride.
Yeah, I was gonna say that. Yeah, like it was really cool to see, and it was briefly. They didn't stay on that view for very long, but it didn't look like they were being shaken around or anything. I think in one view, I think I saw someone's knee move a little bit.
A little bit.
Oh, it's terrible quality rides. Scrap the whole thing. Knee shakes,
yeah.
Awful.
Oh,
And
you want to rock it with no vibration problems? There's an Ares 1 poster behind me. We want to talk about that? No one. Okay, fine.
No, another time.
There's already a question here from Thomas Rawson. Will I be able to see the reentry from my location of where I live? Now, I don't know where you live.
Well, that's problem number 1. It looks like they're targeting the Cape Canaveral splashdown zone right now. Hopefully they'll get a final confirmation of that closer to the deorbit burn. So they're going to kind of re-enter over Central Florida and splash down off the coast of the Cape. So anywhere in Central Florida, and again, it's going to re-enter pretty high up. So anywhere really in Central Florida might get a decent shot at catching a plasma trail if the lighting conditions are proper and the clouds don't get in your way. I think it's at least worth a shot of stepping outside and taking a look. If it
Yeah.
is visible, it'll be very hard to miss.
Yeah. And this
But
this view we're seeing right now, actually, this was tracked by Thomas,
yeah.
in wonderful fashion. And in that previous view, we were looking down, like down the engine bell of the second stage, and you could basically see why this happens because you could just see the sunlight over the limb of the Earth, right? And it was igniting the the plume. Yeah, well, there you go, right there. And you could just see this. You could see that the sunlight is hitting the engine bell, and so like after these sort of launches, I end up explaining this to people a lot. Like last night, I
Mhm.
did a thing here we have in Cocoa Beach called Friday Fest, and there were a lot of locals that had never even seen this before. My guess is because they don't want to get up for the early morning ones, because usually we see
It
this
happens more often in the morning, yeah.
right. And but on the webcast, you can see perfectly why it's happening because you've got darkness on the ground, and then you've got the engine bell is being lit up by the sun, which in turn is lighting up the exhaust plume as well.
Yeah,
Makes for
that's another reason we were lucky it went at the opening, because if it pushed, even a half hour, it probably wouldn't have gotten that same effect. But absolutely gorgeous launch, and I'll be saying it felt good to be tracking a launch again. It had been a while.
yeah,
I guess the last one I tracked would have been back the Antares launch from Wallops forever ago.
yeah.
So it was good to do that again, and especially I had that decision which I forgot we had to do when the stages separated and you could see both, and they're getting farther and farther apart, and I'm going, oh wait, I gotta pick one.
Oh yeah. Yeah,
And I
because
ended up
we
I
did
ended
get
up
to
picking the first one because I was like, oh, eventually I know I'll lose stage two eventually, but stage
uh-huh.
one maybe it'll stay lit until it reaches the entry burn. But it fell below sunlight before the entry burn started, so I ended up losing it. In fact, I think I lose it right there, right on cue.
But
And then so then I just went back to the second stage.
yeah, and we did get to see the entry burn
We did.
from the press site. I
Yeah, and
was
I regained it for a little bit.
I think at that moment I was like I was so excited, and I saw the space station fly over, and I was running over to where
Hmm.
you guys were to be like, hey, look, space station.
Yeah, that
And
was cool to see.
yeah. And one of the highlights for me, and I think we have the picture that we could pull up, was seeing the crew drive by the press site.
Mm. Yeah,
That was fun.
we mentioned this on stream. Since the beginning of these crew launches, obviously there's been limited access to the press site for these kind of things due to the ongoing pandemic. And so this was actually the first launch where we're finally all, vaccinated, wearing masks, all those things, to the fact that we could have a full team at the press site for this one. And
Hmm.
so we got to all see the crew drive out, and Steven just got this awesome shot of Jared uh,
Yeah,
on his way to
giving a
the
hang loose, I guess you'd call it.
yeah,
Is that
a
what that is?
shaka, whatever it's called. Um, that was super cool to see, and so the whole team. That was my first time seeing this because I was on a different part of base for crew two,
Yep.
and seeing that was a special thing. And we talked about during the stream, from a launch visuals perspective, most of these launches don't look that much different from other ones. Yeah, there's a dragon on top instead of a fairing. That doesn't make that big of a visual difference. The things that make a difference are when you experience those kind of things. When you see the crew drive out, that's kind of the first thing. Um, and then like comm checks kind of help out a little bit. And then the big moments is when you get into the countdown events, the crew access arm and the launch escape system being armed. Those
Hmm.
things are like remind you like, hey, this launch is a little different. The stakes are higher. But
Yeah.
it makes it really exciting, and that was an awesome experience. Someone also asked, do we still get nervous during human spaceflight launches? The answer is yes.
Hmm. It's
Um,
just different, as much as you know that, I mean, every Falcon 9 launch I've ever watched has gone swimmingly, but you
mhm,
still there's people on board, and there was a lot riding on this particular mission,
mhm.
it's the first private passengers, and they're just wonderful human beings, and it's for a great cause, and you would hate for something to go wrong, it's always in the back of your mind, but um everything went great, and hopefully everything continues to go great for these crew
Right.
missions.
Almost done. Should be just about 4 hours left in their mission, actually. We're getting pretty close to the business end.
Yeah.
Um, And
Yeah, that's
wishing
right.
them the safe return home.
We are so far expecting a Space Coast splashdown, Gavin.
Yes, I'm looking forward to it.
Yes.
Dragon is due to splash down off Cape Canaveral tonight at 7:06 p.m. Eastern. And when I say just off Cape Canaveral, I mean they're about 40-ish kilometers of northeast of 39A where they launched from. That's how close they're coming back. The Dragon recovery ship Go Searcher is on station at the splashdown site, and we'll swoop in to pick them up. We should see all that live on the webcast this evening from SpaceX.
Mhm.
And fingers crossed, it all goes well. They hop off the ship. We get to see them come out of Dragon, and happy days.
Yeah, I wonder what kind of views we'll get because it'd be nice if I could use the webcast to know when they hit the plasma regime. What do you call it? Plasma regime? The
Yeah,
the fiery part of reentry?
the toasty part. The part
Yeah,
where they toast the marshmallow.
yeah. And let's see, who do we have downrange for recovery, Gav?
Go Searcher, which is the one of two Dragon recovery ships, and is the one they station out in the Atlantic Ocean. The other one is Go Navigator, which is still out there on the other side of Florida in the Gulf of Mexico. Should SpaceX wave off, they want to change the splashdown site, they have that option if they need to.
Mhm. All right, let's see. Let me hit a couple questions, a couple super chats. Musical Wolves coming in as usual. Intro song as ringtone available. Oh yeah, that's a question. Is that possible to do a?
I think the audio in the NSF live intro is a licensed piece of music, so you'd have to buy the license for it. Sorry.
Okay. Yeah. Moldy Space Industries was super happy to donate to St. Jude and will again, but today it's Thomas Fan Club time. All right.
Thanks, Multi
And
Space.
Musical Wolves coming in a couple more times. Any tips on getting a pic of Dragon in orbit without the streak and not using a very high ISO? Well, Musical Wolves, this will be my first time being able to try this out. And because it's going to be daytime, I think the idea of like a long exposure streak is out the window. So I'm going to be probably prepared with my 600 millimeter lens. So use whatever zoom lens you got. And as far as like what settings to expect, I would just say point at the sky and find an appropriate exposure for, what you're at. I always sit at about f 7.1 and then adjust my shutter speed accordingly. But yeah, try to keep your ISO down. If you find that you're not getting too much that your exposure is good and you're not getting too much like motion blur, then you shouldn't need ISO. But if you need to crank up your shutter speed some, then take that ISO up, and then you'll be able to take your shutter speed up along with it. So it's kind of a play with it until you get something that you like. Um, but I would think that how long does this part of the reentry take? Like, how long does that last?
The plasma regime only lasts a couple of minutes.
Okay.
So it's not super long, but they're
So
going
you
pretty
won't have,
fast. So visually, I mean, it's a long streak of space.
but if you've ever shot a rocket launch, then that only lasts, really a couple
Right.
of minutes as far as what you can photograph. So yeah, it'll be kind of along those lines, like, act quick and assertively. It's like if you're not 100% sure on what settings you need, just be ready to change them up as you need to. And that's kind of how I attack stuff like this, because like I said, I've never seen a re-entry before. I didn't live around here for space shuttle, so I've been looking forward to this for a long time.
Mhm.
And I don't know,
And this
hopefully
will
I
be
get
the
a decent
first
photo.
one, as long as they don't change it at the last minute, that actually splashes down off the East Coast.
Hmm.
Because the previous three have all gone to the Gulf. So yeah, hopefully, I know I'm gonna at least step outside and take a look. We'll see.
Yeah. Okay, and Musical Wolves again, is there any condition that would allow the deorbit burn to have a jellyfish effect? That is an interesting question.
Not really. So the deorbit burn is conducted by a set of four forward-facing thrusters that are around where the docking port would normally be. Obviously, it's where the cupola is now. Um, There's just 4 small RCS thrusters, so it's not a very big plume. And since they're in orbit, the plume expands pretty much instantly. So there's not going to be not much. There isn't much that will get backlit by sunlight or anything like that.
Yeah.
So I would not expect that. No.
And then
Plus,
I
it'll be
accidentally,
on the other half of the over the other half of the globe anyway. So
right, because when you do your deorbit burn, you want to do that burn on the opposite side of the planet that you're landing, right?
just about, yeah.
Yeah. Play Kerbal, and that'll teach you that one. I can never
This
get that
visual
right
here
though. I'm like,
shows
oh,
kind
go
of
ahead.
where we're looking. Obviously, they've got a couple different splashdown zones, and that current ground track comes close to the Cape Canaveral one. That deorbit burn will hopefully refine the reentry path to that southernmost reentry zone, is I think what we're expecting right now.
Okay. Yeah, those look like three-dimensional blocks there.
Yeah,
I guess
those are
that's because,
the three splashdown sort of areas they've got marked out. The top one being earmarked as Jacksonville, then you've got the middle one's Daytona Beach, and then the bottom one, which what they're targeting as Cape Canaveral.
this is it just makes my day. I mean, since Bob and Doug launched, I've been waiting for a Space Coast splashdown. I know it's kind of greedy because we get all the launches, all the fun stuff,
Yeah.
but this is something new. I've never seen this sort of thing before.
Yeah, it's just a bit frustrating that typically the weather's a lot better in the Gulf of Mexico at any given time than the Atlantic Ocean, so they tend to favor the Gulf of Mexico. But we've got all the right conditions, so
Yeah.
fingers crossed it happens and we get to see it.
So I accidentally threw this one up when I was trying to throw the last one up, but we'll go ahead and pose it anyway. Is it true that Inspiration4 crew is actually commercial astronauts?
Yeah, so they keep kind of changing the regulations and stuff about how you can earn astronaut wings. Obviously, they won't be getting them from NASA because they're not government employees.
Hmm.
The FAA should award them commercial astronaut wings since they passed the 50-mile or about 80-kilometer mark. I don't believe the FAA has any wing distinctions between orbital and suborbital astronauts. But yes, they should be able to collect their astronaut wings when they return to Earth.
Cool. Let's see. Let's go to the question queue. Remember, you can do at NASA Spaceflight in chat, and we have a nifty software that will show that to us, and we can hopefully get to as many questions as possible. Ross wanted to know what was your favorite bit of the Inspiration4 SpaceX live stream from Crew Dragon Resilience on Friday? Well, have you watched it yet, Thomas? Because I know we were obviously streaming from the press site, but have you gone back and watched the stream?
I did go back and watch the launch portion, just the launch portion of the Spacex stream, but from the other spots that we were seeing while we were live as well, and the feeds we were bringing in, um, it was just awesome to see everything where you were showing the crew during
Hmm.
walkout, during suit up, them interacting with the closeout crew, interacting with people who were lined up and just cheering them on. And then once during the ascent, seeing the interior views during the ascent, and then when they became weightless, all of those views were just super awesome to see. Um, Something to be said about quote unquote everyday people going to space. I know it's not. Um, we're not at the point where these are people that could have afforded to buy the ticket themselves, though they still needed a billionaire to sponsor their way to space. But we're getting there. This is a step in that direction.
Yeah.
Um, and so getting to see 3 other people who really are just people who wanted to go to space and thus had the chance to do so,
Hmm.
seeing them experience spaceflight was very, very cool.
Yeah.
Um,
Gav, what was
yeah.
your favorite
Yeah,
part?
can I just say this clip that we're showing on screen? This is my exact favorite moment of
Yeah.
the
Yeah.
webcast. Oh, the opening of Hangar X, them just walking out. That was amazing. If it had been like set to music and there were like the sparklers going off, it really would have. It really would, that there where they're just the crowds there. That is just brilliant. I love that. They should just do that
Yeah.
for NASA astronauts. So it's brilliant.
Yeah, we were watching this. I think Chris was eating a sandwich, and we're like watching this on the stream, and we were just losing it. And I was like, this looks exactly like the end of Star Wars: New Hope to me, right? The heroes walk out and everything. Like they should be putting medals around their necks, like at the end of this walkway. And then what was really cool is whenever this happened, we're like, okay, well they're coming our way because there's only one way, unless you want to go way out of your way. There's only one way to get
You
to
like drive past
LC-39A.
the shuttle landing facility, make a right at some point, and then come up past 39B if you really wanted to avoid us. I don't know.
Or you can go south down to Port Canaveral, go go in
Oh,
through
jeez.
the
And then
45th.
up rocket, up missile ICBM road the entire
Yeah.
way.
Yeah, you could totally do that. But then what was really cool is we could see the helicopter coming. And so
Yeah.
at that point, it's like, okay, now we know right where they are. So
Mhm.
everybody get ready. And of course, there were some rules like, you can't run right to the road. And, we had to kind of stay within boundaries. But it was cool to see them go by. And, Jared had his window down. There were 3 Teslas total.
Yeah.
And it was hard to tell who was in what car, except for I could see Jared. I didn't, and at the
Right.
time, I didn't notice on the stream. I didn't know that he was riding with Chris Zimbrowski.
Right.
So all I knew was, well, that's the car Jared's in, but I didn't know where anybody else was.
Yeah, and then Cyan and Haley were in one of the other ones, and then the third one's just closeout crew members.
Mhm.
And yeah, that was awesome to see. So this is the kind of Hangar X, which is at the Roberts Road facility at the Kennedy Space Center, which is different than how they handled the NASA missions. At NASA missions, the astronauts suit up at the Neil Armstrong Operations something building, which is was a bit farther away from the launch pads, a little bit farther south on Kennedy Space Center. And they're already suited up when they get into the Teslas and drive out to the pad. Here, they came out in just their flight suits, not their actual their pressure suits, and got suited up much closer to the 39A pad, which we were kind of speculating. We wonder if that's just for private missions, or if that building is now able to support NASA missions too, and they'll do it that way going forward. I don't know. But
I
making the
just
bit of a shorter drive out to 39A to get suited up than the NASA missions do.
my initial thought on that is that maybe it's just I hope that this is the case. I would hope that, like, for NASA missions, they would continue to use the same facility that they've always, just because that walkout from that historic door,
Yes.
that all these astronauts have walked out for decades. To me, I think it'd be cool if they continued to use that as for the NASA missions. Oh, and
Check out
here's
Jared just like casually pulling out his phone, like while he waits to get to the pad. It's like, oh, I gotta waste some time here.
Boring
I'll just,
trip.
Oh, it's so
He
cool.
was
I've driven
very,
past that many times.
very cool, calm, and collected. I noticed Jared. He was unfazed by all of this. I think he enjoyed it, but very much different from the other people.
Yeah, like very cool cucumber. In fact, like I was expecting and I was hoping that, like, they'd have their windows down and like waving and everything, and I was hoping to get some photos of that. But it was just Jared with his window down, and he barely did anything. Like, he did kind of wave. I have a couple photos of him like with his hand out, just sort of like a wave, and then he
Yeah.
did the thing. But I guess, this is a guy that's flown fighter jets, for years, and my guess is like this is him in the zone. Like
Right.
it's like all, fanfare is over at this point. It's time to get down to business, because he's the commander of the mission. He has to be on point and know what he's doing, and the time. It's fun. I'm sure it's always fun, but he's got serious business to take care of, right?
Right.
Let's see if we've got any other questions. Oh, this is a good question. Ross says, do SpaceX have any more new Crew Dragon capsules in production? Do we know?
I believe they're supposed to operate a fleet of 3 eventually. So they've got Endeavor and Resilience, and I think they are adding a third for Crew 3, maybe. Let me do a quick Google real quick. It's hard, sometimes we try to predict what questions we're going to get, and then I prepare a bunch of notes, and you guys always think of questions that I did not that I did not predict. So let me see here.
I'm hearing my producer say that Crew 3 is a new capsule.
Crew 3, okay, see, thank you. So there will be a third one which will be the next Crew Dragon mission at the end of October.
Right, yeah, next month. And it will get a fancy new name, which I don't think we'll know until the day of launch or maybe the week of
I
launch.
think
When did they announce the names
before they've
previously?
announced it when they reached orbit. At least that's what they did with Endeavor. I don't remember if
I
they
think
revealed Resilience earlier or not.
I think Resilience was sometime before the launch because I think
Yeah,
I remember being surprised by that.
yeah. So sometime
'Cause-
around the launch, though, not like way in advance.
yeah. Okay.
And that'll
And
be
so
named by the first crew that flies the spacecraft. Basically, is the crew that gets to name the capsule.
right, and that's a tradition that goes back since the beginning, right? The whole like naming it once you're in orbit thing. Like even like Kerbal gives you that ability, right?
Yeah.
Like when you're playing Kerbal Space Program, you can rename your craft once you reach orbit, or anytime. But let's see. Dalton Cushing wants to know: will you be able to hear a sonic boom? I'd like to know that as well,
I
because the
don't.
shuttle had a sonic boom when it came back.
don't
Come
wanna
on, give me good news, Thomas.
I don't want to definitively answer. I'm gonna say don't expect one. But if you hear one, I didn't tell you you wouldn't. I think it's such a quick mini physics lesson. Sonic boom
Yeah.
gets more intense the bigger the leading edge is, basically, which is why the shuttle had nice loud sonic booms. Falcon 9, that wide blunt end of the rocket. Dragon is a smaller vehicle, and so
But the you're saying the leading edge is the same width as the
except
Falcon
Falcon
9.
9 comes down at an angle too, so there's that effect. It's
Oh.
not, the physics isn't exactly the same. You're right, it might. Um, Geez, I don't know. I'm pessimistic about Dragon creating an audible sonic boom here on the ground, but um, the other
Are you
difference is Falcon 9 creates a boom much closer to the ground than I think Dragon will, because
Yeah.
remember Dragon's going to be pretty far downrange. Um, I don't think so, but I could be mistaken. I don't think so.
Yeah. Hayden Talon wants to know approximately what time will Splashdown be? Well, we know kind of precisely what time they plan on doing it, right?
Yeah, luckily they've done the math on this one. 7:06 p.m. Eastern Time, or 23:06 UTC tonight.
Ah, very cool. I just glanced over and noticed someone said that they spotted Dragon. Oh, this was 21 minutes ago. Spotted Dragon flyby last night around 8 p.m. in Minnesota. That's pretty cool.
Very
Uh,
cool.
yeah. Let's see. Other questions. Henry Ryder, what time zone are they using on Inspiration4? As I know that ISS missions use GMT because of its global nature. That is a good question. What are they doing with that?
I think I mean, all the like public facing stuff when they were like announcing scheduled transmissions and stuff like that, they were using Eastern Time. I don't know if that means that's the clocks they used on Dragon, or if they did use UTC or like Pacific Time because of SpaceX Mission Control or something. They didn't really specify that, but yeah, they did not necessarily need to use UTC like they do for International Space Station missions, but I don't think they specified.
Um, I glanced over at the chat and saw someone say, "Tell people to stay away from the landing zone." Yes, that goes without saying. But
Yes.
Gavin, do you want to do that? You want to tell people to stay out?
Yeah, do not sail your boat towards the splashdown site. Now, I know there's a 110% chance that every single person watching here knows that, but let's say it anyway.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
the Coast Guard will be out there. Obviously, if you recall back to Demo 2, where we had the Wayward Boat range violations, the Coast Guard and SpaceX, they looked at that after it happened, reviewed it, and they've now got, they've got more Coast Guard assets out there securing the range. Their sort of advertisement of it is louder. If you look on Coast Guard social media feeds, Facebook, Twitter, they've all been talking about the last couple of days. The awareness campaign and the enforcement is improved a lot since the Demo 2 incident. So it shouldn't happen again, basically. And we're doing this splashdown off Cape Canaveral, where boaters are pretty used to having, bits of
Mm-hmm.
the water blocked off for launches. So they're fairly used to the warning notices going out.
Here, this question, I don't want to asked this question like 100 different ways, but because it mentions Starbase, if entry is over the Gulf, can they see it from Starbase?
Someone
If
asked me that when on the last splashdown. So I think the answer to that was no. You could see it a lot closer from Florida, but I'm sure someone asked me that, and then
Mhm.
someone else tried to see it from Starbase at the time and they couldn't. So I'm going to say no, but the magic of clouds and weather, you never know.
Yeah.
I remember Crew One's return, it was visible along the Gulf Coast in like Louisiana or something, which is farther east than Starbase is. I think Starbase is too far west for even the Gulf splashdowns to catch the plasma trail. I'm pretty sure.
Okay. Let's see. What was I going to go? Oh yeah, the live stream yesterday. Like we had waited since launch. They got into orbit, and then
Mm,
the stream was cut. It was not. It wasn't like a NASA mission where they did the 24-hour coverage until they got to the space station. Of course, they're not going to the space station, but this being a private mission, there was no like expectation and obligation for SpaceX to continue streaming the entire thing, right? They've and I would think that they don't want to be on.
right.
It's like I like doing NSF live, but I don't want to be doing NSF live 24 hours a day. you know Oh, this is so cool. Yeah, it was so good. I was out setting up actually yesterday for Friday Fest, and I got my alarm that was like, "Hey, the stream is about to go live." And it was just so good to turn that on and see them and see Haley upside down, of
With a
course.
massive
You know,
grin
I
on her
just
face.
in my head I just went, why is she doing that? Isn't that uncomfortable? The blood's gonna rush to her head, and I'm like, oh
Like
yeah, microgravity. That's not a
yeah.
thing.
Yeah, like
Had to
the
think about
blood's
it
in
for a
their head
second.
already. And they look happy.
Yeah.
I would love to know like what like the first day was like, if there's been
Hmm.
any like uh orbital sickness. I was gonna say seasickness, but like orbital sickness. I know that they were given
Space
some
sickness.
medicine. Yeah. Um they were given some medicine to help combat the nausea, right? Do you know what that was? I know there's what do you call it what you take before you go out on a boat? Dramamine. Uh, I'm
I
guessing
don't
it's
know. I know there's
I don't
something,
know.
I couldn't tell you the name of it.
okay. And then they show us a view from the cupola. And what kind of what kind of stuff are they doing? I know that we sort of looked into what kind of science are they doing. Do you know what we can talk about there with what they're doing while they're there?
Yeah, most of the research they brought on, which again is a pretty limited pack because they're only up for 3 days and they only have the Dragon payload
Mhm.
racks versus like the entire International Space Station to work with. But most of their research was medical in some nature. They're going to do some radiation exposure studies because this orbit is slightly higher, actually it's pretty significantly higher than the International Space Station.
Mhm.
The radiation levels are a bit different. That information is crucial for long duration space flight and space flight into deep space, such as the moon and Mars. So there's some interest there. I know Chris was doing some medical research into glucose levels on orbit and how that might be affected by the space environment, which is a very cool thing about, can we expand the range of people who can be astronauts now? Are our vehicles and our medical knowledge and all that enable, there are less medical barriers to going to space, which I think is a very important thing to keep working on.
Yeah.
Of course, they are also up there doing imagery, which is a great help of this cupola that they've stuck on the front of Dragon here, ability to capture some photography from orbit. Can't wait to see the stuff that they come up with that way. Because wow, what a view!
Yeah.
There's probably, I mean, that imagery gets used for research all the time. They take photos, and astronauts spend a lot of time on the International Space Station just taking photos from the cupola, and that imagery gets used in Earth observation science.
Yeah.
So that'll likely get used that way as well. So yeah, they've been working on that. They did a big call pretty much immediately, I think the first day, with St. Jude's themselves, like a private call from orbit to them.
Yes. Oh
Obviously,
yeah.
that is a huge part of this mission. The main purpose is showing it's not a false, it's not a zero sum game of getting both advancing space exploration, exploring solar system, leaving Earth, and also helping. Sorry, I'm laughing at Chris like bumping
Yeah.
his head on the dragon capsule. Microgravity's hard to get used to, right?
Right.
Solving problems on Earth while also tackling new problems off Earth. That's the main. I think the main message here. And so their St. Jude's event is obviously very important. I understand that that was like private for St. Jude's people. That's understandable. Some people were commenting that they were disappointed in the public stuff once they got on orbit. I think they did the one on orbit event. Again, they're only up there for 3 days. And I think that's fine. And I think them doing a publicly available, a Netflix show helps get a lot of the information about this mission out there. And I think the launch coverage and all of those things. I mean, look at that. Geez. I think all of this
Incredible.
is pretty much what all we could ask for from this mission. It is a private mission. Some people are, they're comparing it to the NASA missions. Like, well, those NASA missions, while yeah, they were commercial from NASA's side of things, where they bought the spacecraft and the rocket to conduct the mission, that's still government spaceflight. So you're entitled to a lot more transparency on those missions. Commercial spaceflight has no obligation to be transparent.
Mhm.
We even talked about the last couple of weeks about new launch providers, new satellite launch providers who are deciding to do launch broadcasts. None of them are obligated to do any of those things.
Yeah.
They choose to do so because it does help raise support for spaceflight in general, which will, in the long term, help them recruit engineers, help them gain customers, stuff like that. But in reality, they have no obligation to do those kind of things. Commercial
Mhm.
space has no transparency obligation like that. And so, to some people, maybe realizing that with the first commercial SpaceX mission where the astronauts are not government employees, um, not to say that they aren't doing a lot of outreach and public facing stuff, but I think that's something to keep in mind is like if you're really excited about commercial space, just know that this is part of it. A lot of it is going to be private in the sense that the customers are the only ones who get to experience all of it.
Mhm.
That's just how the commercial space program is going to work.
That is
But
true.
I
Yeah.
think I think they've handled the mission well so far, and it's just another reminder that this mission is a step towards what you would call democratizing space. These astronauts were the seats on this mission were paid for by someone who had billions and billions of dollars to spend on it,
Yeah.
um, and so
We don't
it's
have any
different.
idea what the price tag was, do we? Because
We
I've been asked
know
that a
there's public
lot.
documentation about what a seat on Dragon is. It's about 50 million a seat,
Uh-huh.
roughly. Obviously, mission specific things will change that. Um, this mission will have some less cost from the fact that it doesn't have all of the NASA requirements and International Space Station rendezvous stuff they have to work through. Maybe adding the cupola and swapping that out might have increased costs a little bit. So there's a lot of factors that could have fluctuated what the actual price for this specific mission was. But somewhere in the realm of hundreds of millions of dollars uh, as the cost for this mission.
All right. Let's see. Let's hit a couple questions. I'll try to catch up on super chats as
Yeah, keep
well
them
before.
coming.
Yeah. Yeah. There's lots of questions about this mission, and I
And then
understand.
we got other stuff to talk about too. But Inspiration
We
4 is the big news story, so we can keep talking
yeah.
about it.
Yeah. I don't mind talking about this. I've told several people that like I've been covering these launches. I've lived here on the Space Coast for about 4 years, but I've been covering them as a member of the media for about 2 years, 2.5 years, something like that. And you know you get you do get used to the launches. It's definitely a it never gets old thing, but
Right.
you you know y- it's you get into a groove of launches coming. It's like, all right, well, time to go do remotes, time to go to the launch, try,
Mhm.
maybe it's going to scrub, okay, not a big deal. But
Yeah.
this mission just affected me different, just because of who was going, the cause that it was for. It made me feel like this is the first thing in a long time that has made me feel like I could someday go to space. You know what I mean? Like, I can't afford a trip like this, but half of the reason that I'm even interested in space is because I want to go there. You know,
hmm
did it
And
hit you guys the same way?
a little bit. Gavin, you want to talk? You want to answer first?
Yeah, yeah, I agree. Obviously, it's something that's not affordable right now for the
No.
average person, but missions like this, they raise the awareness and the sort of, I don't know, more people get interested in it. And then as more people get interested, more people get involved, that cost goes down, and eventually we could all be going into space. So it's a key sort of introductory milestone. The first average Joes going to space.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly what you said, basically.
Yeah,
I,
and yeah, go ahead. Sorry, Thomas.
I think the distinction that I would make is I don't think this mission made me think, yeah, it's possible for me to go to space one day more than the suborbital stuff, because the Spaceship 2 and New Shepard price tags are significantly less than the price tag for a seat on a Dragon capsule. So to experience space flight in some aspect of getting, above the McDowell line, whatever line you want to use, experiencing basically space flight, no matter how technical you want to get with it, experiencing rocket powered flight, experiencing weightlessness, and seeing Earth from that kind of perspective. That felt more accessible once New Shepard and New Shepard and Spaceship 2 were flying people on board. I think obviously I still can't afford a seat on either of those vehicles, but I'm closer to that than Dragon. So there's still work to be done before you can claim that that has open access to space for everybody, allowing everyone to experience that. That hasn't happened yet, and there are ways from doing so, but they are closer. But on the flip side of things, I would point out that some people, there's a difference between experiencing spaceflight in that aspect, experiencing weightlessness for a few minutes, experiencing being pushed into your seat by a rocket engine. Those are all great, and I think those will all be really enjoyable, and I hope a lot of people can experience those things. But it's different to live in space for a set amount of time, even if it's only 3 days. That's a very different experience. And I think this mission has put a big step forward saying that can be something that will also become accessible in the future. This plays directly into the Starship program, which his entire goal is to enable people to live and work in space, both in microgravity and then on the moon and Mars. And I think SpaceX demonstrating that they're in that business too, and they're working on that as well, working with private citizens to go to space and live there for a little bit. I think that's the step that was taken with Inspiration4 among many other goals of this mission. And I think that's the distinction to be made. And I think this mission raised some awareness of that side of going to space as a private citizen.
Well, and of course, there's always Starship point to point. That may
If
be
that,
a
I don't
reality.
know. I'm
It may be
skeptical about that
someday.
still.
I don't know.
I hope so. I think that'd be an awesome thing. I just don't know how I feel like sometimes I feel like SpaceX is very serious about making that happen. Like if you ask Gwynne Shotwell about it, she's convinced that that will be a thing that SpaceX does. So I hope she's right. But I know it's not the first priority right now. Maybe it'll become more apparent once Starship is farther along in development.
What if? Okay, hopefully. Okay, Gav. All right.
Yeah.
Hopefully, you don't have to wait this long to see a rocket launch. But what if you fly Starship to the Cape to see your first rocket launch?
I think it would. I think it would take the whole like sheen and thrill of seeing the rocket launch because you came on a rocket to see the rocket launch. But technically, it would still be you viewing your first rocket launch because you're on board the previous rocket you're coming to see. So technically,
But you still don't really see what it's like with because you won't see it from the outside. It'd still be worth it to
Imagine
see
your
another
first
one
ever
launch.
rocket launch. The first one you ever experienced is one you were on board. What a weird flex that would be.
Yeah, someone asks, "Oh, have you ever seen a rocket launch?"
well, actually,
Kind of, asterisk.
yeah,
I was on
kind of.
board.
Although that would also mean that you didn't see any of the that either meant you didn't see any of the previous launches from whatever Earth-to-Earth spaceport you were launching from, or you were on the first launch from that spaceport, which is extra risky.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, that's true. Oh, yeah, because I suppose you would probably see other rockets launching before you get on unless they do the ocean platform thing, and you don't see anything until you go out to the ocean platform to launch.
Maybe. Depends on how far offshore it is. Anyway, should we be talking about Starship? Is this our segue into the Starship news?
Let's do it.
Well, okay. Well, let me hit some of these. Let me hit some of these super chats. Let's see, we've got David Dean. Thank you for all the coverage. Great job raising money for St. Jude and getting Jack to weep on air. That's awesome. Let's see, Falcon Heavy just became a member. Wow. Talking
Hey.
heavy as a
Yo,
member.
the real one?
I guess so. It has to be, right? And
Has gotta be.
also DJ Pot Roast. Well, that's a wonderful name. Let's see. Uh, let's see. Space Channel 5 saying best culture ship name that never existed. GSV for all intensive purposes.
Hmm.
I don't.
That would
Yeah.
be a go. Hey, listen, those oil rigs. There's gonna be more offshore platforms. They're gonna need names, right? The
Yeah.
starships themselves are gonna need names at some point.
hmm Let's see. Okay, that's a Starship one. I can wait on that one. Uh, okay, Musical Wolf says, will next tour dragon be sent to a polar orbit?
We talked about this briefly on the stream. I think that would be very cool to do a polar launch from Cape because they can do that now with crew on board. I don't know. I think all the other private missions that are currently on the manifest are going to the International Space Station, so they can't do that. But not to say that that isn't a possibility for a different customer if they come along.
All right, and then where did it go? Okay, Douglas Richardson says, why do they have a wired mic versus a wireless on Dragon, like the
Oh, the thing
ISS?
that they
Oh yeah,
use on the live events. I think, well, I mean, did you have to like wear like a lav mic or something? That might be awkward in microgravity. Have like a wire floating around you.
they did. They had a wired one. I thought when like with DM2 and
I'm sure it
Crew
was
1 and 2.
wired yesterday. I'm sure it was
Yeah, it
wired.
was. They had it's like a handset thing that's wired to a control panel or something. But I'm
Yeah.
thinking like wearing a wire on you for like a wireless microphone that would transmit somehow.
Right.
That's
Oh, well,
just
that'd be extra complication though, because then you've got
right,
to add
yeah.
a receiver and a transmitter. You've got to think about charging the batteries in your.
And then you need 4 microphones instead of one you
Yeah,
can pass around. So see now
suddenly
you're
you just.
increasing your launch mass. Rocket science, guys. Everything's got to be really light, really simple.
All right, and then just a new member, Ubique or Ubiqua, doing 2 memberships. So they must have become a member and then upgraded. Awesome. Thank you very much for that ongoing support. And also, since we're talking about support, if you like to support what we are doing and you like to have a tangible thing in your hand, we have just the thing for you. We've got a thing called the NASA Spaceflight Store. And I think
Is
we
this where
have
me and
some.
Gavin stand up and show our merch that we're both
Oh
how
yeah,
about
there
that?
you go.
Hey.
And all I'm wearing is a lousy Festivus T-shirt.
Yeah,
So
You
Steve's
gotta
not
get
wearing
on
the NSF
brand.
merch. What is he
that's
doing?
right.
Oh.
It's dirty.
There's
My
new
couple NSF
Starship
shirts.
stuff.
Yes,
Michael,
there
I know you're
is.
handling show the IKEA spoof thing. The Starship
Oh, the
Assembly
IKEA
shirt.
spoof.
Yes.
Oh,
I believe this is the newest addition to the store, and it's one of
yeah.
my favorites.
Yeah, I haven't seen that one. That is awesome.
Yeah, that was
Um,
amazing.
and then there's the other one where it's like you've got Starship, and then like there's like a border around it that consists of like the heat tiles. There's like these
Yeah,
heavy.
yeah, yeah.
I think
There,
yeah,
that
that one
one.
right there. I love that shirt. Yeah.
So that
Yeah.
is
So.
available at nasaspaceflight.com/store or /shop or shop.nasaspaceflight.com. One of those things. Mod can put that link in the chat, please.
If you go to nasaspaceflight.com, there's a link right at the top of the page. Or if you're on mobile, I think you might have to hit the little hamburger thing in the top left corner. But it's there. Yeah. So anything you get helps support the show, keeps the lights on, keeps those robots running. Yeah. So is it time to talk about everyone's beloved
I
shiny
don't know.
rocket?
Was there any Starship news this week? Did anything happen?
I don't know. I know. I just got back. I am freshly back from my trip to Boca Chica. I've
Oh
now
yeah,
been there
welcome back.
twice. Yes, yeah, it was awesome. I had to get back in time for Inspiration4, and that worked out perfectly. Um, I just, it's just such a magical place. Like you can watch the daily videos, and they definitely they keep you up to date. And now like I feel in even more connection to those daily videos because I just spent a whole week doing the dailies, or like I don't know, it was like 9 days or something. I was doing the dailies because my last trip it was sort of kind of learn from Mary and go around look for stuff, but it wasn't like I'm the person doing the dailies every single day. But when you're there and you're kind of walking in Mary's shoes, it really and looking for stuff to film. And by the way, every day I would start out the day like as I'm shooting the sunrise, I'm like, oh man, I hope there's enough interesting stuff to fill a daily. I'd always feel a little bit of pressure, to come up with enough footage. And every single day there was something interesting going on. Of course, there was the Booster 4 rollout, which was awesome to see in person. Um, and then there was things like simple stuff like they're working on the foundation for the new high bay. One thing that was super cool to me, it wasn't really that much of an update. I hope if you guys out there are watching the daily videos, I hope you didn't mind me throwing in like 2 days in a row throwing in footage of SN6 being scrapped, because
Mhm.
that to me was fascinating, right? I was actually over there at the where they're doing the construction for the new high bay, and I'm like filming what's directly in front of me, and then I hear this clanging, and I didn't even notice, but if I looked past the construction, um, I could see them literally rolling this barrel. I didn't know which Starship it was, but it's like it's rocking back and forth, and then so I like quickly went around and got a different angle on it, and there was like one of those. It's like a forklift, but it's got the long arm. What is that thing called? I can't remember. But it was on one side, and like lifting it to roll it. I guess they were trying to get access to a certain part of it, and I guess somebody was in there cutting it up or something. Anyway, that was super fascinating to me. But yeah, what do we got this week? What's going on over there in Starbase now?
Well, I think the biggest portion is this tweet and subsequent retweet right here. Um, we've mentioned a lot of people have been asking when Starship going to make that first orbital test flight, and we're like, it all depends on the FAA. Well, the next big step has finally been made. So the FAA released what is called a draft environmental assessment, which is basically a draft of this document that describes what environmental impacts Starship operations could have on the surrounding area in Boca Chica. These environmental assessments happen for every launch complex in the United States whenever new operations are taking place. There's ones for like when Falcon 9 operations started in Cape Canaveral and Vandenberg, non-SpaceX operation, other launch providers all have to do this process. This was the first one for orbital launches from Boca Chica. And so they've released a draft of that document that now is open for a public comment period for the next 30 days up until October 18th. And if you saw us kind of freaking out on Twitter when this first happened, you'll notice they got the date wrong in this tweet like twice. So we kept retweeting the FAA, and then the FAA tweet would be deleted because they had to fix the date. And we're like, why do they keep deleting the tweet? But the October 18th is the end of the public comment period. And to do that, there's information on the FAA's website on how to submit any comments if you want to express any opinions, positive or negative, about the Boca Chica project and any things that you want to make sure the FAA addresses, basically.
And this is
That
anybody in the U.S. or like, because I was thinking, back when I first heard about this, I thought it might have to be somebody local or something, but this is anybody in the U.S., huh?
Yeah, I don't believe it's limited to local people that can make comments on this project. But so at the conclusion of this public comment period, they will move into publishing the final version of the environmental assessment. So basically taking the draft and finalizing it. They might have to incorporate changes based on public comments or other things. I know there is one big concern, not big concern, the one concern that that arised from the environmental assessment was there was concerns about affecting wildlife in the area of the spaceport during launch operations. So they're working with the Fish and Wildlife Service to analyze what exactly that impact may be and if it's acceptable or not, basically.
Yeah.
So that is one comment, and there's a bit of an excerpt from the actual document. So that's the one thing they're going to really be looking at, and the one thing that could pose a threat to how if this gets approved or not. Um, Releasing the environmental assessment is not an approval. That's just the document that says this is the impact that these operations would have. And then if it gets approved, if that environmental assessment says that the proposed action, the proposed operations that SpaceX have, would be not have any effects that are worth further work or anything,
Worth shutting
then
it
they
down.
can issue
Yeah.
that launch license, which gives them the ability to actually conduct launch operations.
Mhm.
And so there's a couple more steps that are coming after this that could take a couple months still. Again, at least 1 month for this public comment period, and then after that, it could be a couple months still. But that is the path forward now towards an orbital launch attempt, which again, I think that there's another part of it that Michael's kind of showing, another expert talking about the hours that they're requesting. 500 hours of nominal operations would require road closures, basically, and beach closures. And also, they added an additional 300 hours in order to respond to anomalies if they occur. So that could be, if that's a problem, that's another factor that we noticed. Um, but basically, once they go through this public comment period and everything, that'll pave the way towards a potential launch license. People have
One
been asking,
thing,
does this? Oh, go ahead.
yeah. Well, so Kennedy Space Center is on like a protected area, right? Like
Right.
it's a wild what's the term?
A
It's a
wildlife
wildlife
refuge,
refuge,
I think. Yeah.
right? So is it very different from Boca Chica? I mean, I've seen the wild. Actually, I saw a what's it's called a nilgai out there.
Yeah.
It sort of looks like a deer, but it's like built like a horse. Um, but yeah, there's lots of wildlife out there, but there's also lots of wildlife here. I mean, we see when we're driving around on base, it's there's
Hmm.
boar and there's sometimes there's deer. Obviously, there's millions of birds. So
Alligators.
yeah, alligators, of course. Yeah, that can climb fences, y'all. When you when you see fences around different NASA facilities and they've got the like the angled fence
Right.
like at the top, it's angled out. It's I mean, yeah, sure, it's to try to keep people out, but it's more for the alligators. Um, but yeah, how different is it then? I mean, that's sort of what I think because I've seen a couple people make comments like they shouldn't be able to build there because it's a wildlife refuge, and I'm like, so is the Cape. What do you think? What
Yeah.
are your thoughts on that?
I think it's just a matter of, I mean, space operations have been happening at Cape Canaveral for decades now, and so there's a lot of experience on with NASA and Space Force and the private companies all working with the local environmental authorities to address any concerns that may have as operations at the Space Center expand and stuff like that. I think that's
Hmm.
just new to the Boca Chica area. Um, but SpaceX would have been working with those kind of authorities in Florida already. So working with the Texas authorities and the federal authorities that cover both, SpaceX has some experience with that now. So they should be able to kind of go through those same procedures and say, okay, listen, this is what we need to do to make the spaceport operational. What can we do to either offset that or mitigate its effects in some way? I don't. It shouldn't be prohibitive.
Yeah, like it makes me wonder. Like, is Boca Chica somehow more vulnerable? Just something about the environment
It'll
over
just
there.
be it's different. There's different species in that area and stuff like that. So it's a different scenario. But the procedures for handling it shouldn't be.
Yeah. Hmm.
Also,
Okay.
Mike was pointing out there were some other interesting excerpts from this document. SpaceX is planning to add some pull-offs on Highway 4, which would help mitigate traffic when they have to do rollouts on the highway. Um, so basically I guess allowing the transporter to
So
pass stopped traffic. I guess I'm having trouble visualizing what that might mean. I would think
yeah,
it would
is it
be for the rollout to like pull off, and then
and let
regular traffic
traffic
can
go
like
by?
go past, and then the transporter continues. That's what would make sense to me, because the transporter is the slow thing.
Right.
Um,
Yeah, that's what.
but either
But
way,
yeah,
some
but
some
It
traffic
does,
mitigation.
yeah, it does specify that it'll be a 20-minute wait for drivers. I think in that document they're referencing drivers pulling over and stopping rather than the transporter.
or maybe so that maybe it's a long enough pullover so that the transporter doesn't have to steer off the road, but the traffic can go around it.
Yeah, maybe that's it. That's true.
That could be.
Either way, so they're working on implementing that, which would be a positive effect. Another relevant point was that the environmental assessment actually said no significant noise impacts are expected, which is a thing that a lot of people had concerns about. It was like, oh, the noise of a really loud Starship and super heavy launch could cause problems for nearby South Padre Island and stuff. But this environmental assessment says, really, we're not concerned about noise impacts. That's not a risk that we see being a problem, which is
Yeah.
good, and it's glad that they can address that. Yes, rocket launches will still be loud, but not so loud that it causes like an environmental concern or a concern to the nearby people who live in the area.
Yeah.
So that's good. Um,
Those
let me
little blue
see.
crabs that I see when I'm walking around out there, they can just hide in their little holes.
Blue crabs.
They are some some blue crabs. I'm talking about like blue. I'm like, what? That's like royal blue over there. They're crazy.
We also had some interesting. There was this expert telling about what their proposed annual operations look like how how much time they're going to spend doing static fire operations, different types of launch operations. We can pull that up. Give
Hmm.
some insight into at least what their near-term plans are. And I don't know how hard these are, if they are limits or if they're just estimates that can be plus or minus a bit.
Yeah.
Because the numbers in this annual operations plan were lower than I said. Michael, if we can pull this up. Um, that gives some insight. I'd like to talk about this a little bit. Um, Here, Michael, I want this one. We're talking in our back channel. I want this link, Michael. Um, but there we go. So they're talking about the first line is a little bit took me a second because like 150 seconds, that's a long static fire. Like no, 150 seconds total across a bunch of static fire tests.
Oh.
So
So yeah.
obviously static firing starships and super heavies um, won't take that much time. That's a pretty small thing. But those other lines are I think the number of launches that they expect in an annual year. 20 suborbital starship launches a year during development, and then operationally still 5. I guess that's taking them or giving them some room. If you have new vehicles, they might want to do suborbital test flights of them before they go orbital.
Right.
Maybe that's a thing, or just continued like advanced development. I'm not sure what kind of unless those are Earth to Earth flights, but that's still a
Yeah.
super heavy mission sometimes, but not always, I guess.
Unless
Um,
they're classifying the orbital test as suborbital because it kind of is, right?
I guess I don't know. Um, they're looking at only 5 super heavy launches during a year during an operational phase. That surprises me.
Yeah.
Um,
Is
that launch cadence needs to go up at Boca Chica, I think.
Are we
Um,
assuming that potentially some of those super heavy landings might be elsewhere at sea on the platforms?
right, but I mean, launches and landings are going to occur from elsewhere. But if they're only doing 5 super heavy launches from Boca Chica a year, I'm wondering why there's plans for 2 pads, because that's
yeah,
unnecessary.
right.
And also, that's a very low launch cadence. And again, I don't know what these numbers pertain to. If it's a limit, if it's an estimate for early operations, like and a couple years from now they can ramp that number up. So I don't want to read too much into it. Um, I expect more than 5 super heavy launches from Boca Chica a year once they go into operations, and maybe
Yeah.
that number rises once they're given their launch license and into operations. It's easier to raise that number because obviously it took time for Falcon 9 operations to ramp up too.
Is
So
it
maybe that's
possible that
just the
this is
difference.
just referring to like the next year? I know
Maybe,
this
yeah,
is supposed
maybe.
to
I don't know. I
encompass
guess
like,
what it depends on
future
what they're
operations.
defining as the operational phase, like what that actually means. Obviously, Starship land landings, that just includes the 20 suborbital flights and 3 developmental orbital flights.
Hmm.
Those landing near could be potentially landing near Boca Chica. Obviously, in the near term, they're going to be doing a splashdown off the middle of the Pacific. There was also a blurb that says that they're actually looking at landing on islands in the Pacific Ocean as a potential Starship landing site. Don't
Hmm.
know how that might play in, but that was another part that showed up in this document. But these numbers are interesting, and I want to see how those actually factor into how they plan their actual operations.
Right.
And of course, keeping an eye on fleet operations from the purpose of converted oil rigs and any support vessels that go with them is going to be a big part of that because that's what should enable a really high launch cadence and landing cadence for the Starship program. And I hope they don't rely on that too much. I hope the land-based launch facilities are still useful for them and that the sea launch platforms and stuff like that increase the cadence and aren't there to move all the operations
Replace.
that side of ways. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Yeah, well, the last time Elon mentioned the oil rigs, he pretty much said that we're not interested in them at the moment. We're not thinking about them. So hopefully you're you're right in what you say, is that it's all thinking about land operations at the moment.
Yeah. Let's see. Let's hit some questions, super
Yeah.
chats. Well, let's see. I apologize, Crafty Geek. I did not see your $50 super chat earlier. Thank you very much. I really appreciate that. We
Thank
all
you.
do. And now, this question does go back to Inspiration4, but I didn't want to skip it. So Inspiration4 was comfort G limited for launch. Is G limiting a sort of possible for re-entry, shoot, deploy, and splashdown?
You can plan your reentry trajectory for a certain G limit. Obviously, it's not throttling or anything. But the trajectories are designed to be shallow enough for a certain G load. It's normally a little bit higher than they experience during launch, maybe up to 5 Gs or so, but only for a brief amount of time, nothing too crazy. So that's all about trajectory design and how quickly you reach the denser parts of the atmosphere, basically, which is what creates those accelerations. Shoot deploy is mitigated by having drogue shoots followed by main shoots. So the drogue shoots slow you down a little bit, and then those pull out the main shoots, which are initially reefed or basically held close a little bit so that they don't jerk you into your final splashdown speed, and they're gradually opened. So that's how you handle that. And then obviously the splashdown loads are just mitigated by having those parachutes so that your splashdown speed isn't that fast.
Yeah. Let's see. We got a new member, Kesiak. Thank you very much for that ongoing support. Trying to hit the button there. Okay. Let's see. Rough Riders Show says, what would you prefer to see for my first rocket launch? A night launch or a day launch? That is a good question that causes much contention in the launch viewing community. I
Gavin,
like the
what's
day
your first
launches.
launch? Would you rather it be in daylight or nighttime?
I think, having not seen a rocket launch in person, daytime. I would say that simply because I'd like to be able to see the whole rocket for that brief time that you can as it lifts off. Obviously, at night you're getting the spectacular light display, but you can't necessarily see all the details. I think for your first one, you see the physical rocket, not just the engines firing. That's what I think, and that's my opinion coming into that, having not seen a rocket launch in person. But you might have
Yeah,
something different, Thomas.
I think that whichever one you have the opportunity to see first, just take it. I think they're both awesome. Yeah, the daytime launches, it's cool. During nighttime, you can't necessarily see the rocket itself,
Yeah.
unless you've got a view of the pad before liftoff. But the effect of a night launch turning night into day is something that I hope everyone experiences at some point, because that's just fantastic.
It is
There's nothing
incredible.
like it. A special caveat, if it is a mission with a booster landing, like back at the Cape, night launches are
Daytime.
cool to that respect because the rocket kind of appears out of nowhere, right, during the entry burn and stuff. But during daytime, as long as the sky is clear, you can track that booster all the way up to space and back with your naked eyes. So
Yeah.
I would recommend, if that you have an opportunity for a daytime return to launch site mission, that's a very special viewing experience, and that's what I would recommend. But
Yes.
either way, I mean, a rocket launch is fantastic no matter the conditions, to be honest.
Yeah.
It's all about the noise, and the noise doesn't change whether it's night or daytime.
This is an interesting comment here from Musical Wolves. When the FAA posted "Hello out there," does that mean they want space alien input on the environmental assessment?
Well, we did just go over it's not limited to local people, right? So
Oh, you know what? Speaking of that, I did want to say, like, do we have, like, do we know like a link, like where you actually go, or do we just have to go dig
there's an
through the
email
document to find
address or
it?
something like that.
Oh,
I
it's just
believe,
sort of like a email this, and that's how you comment.
yeah, it's all, if you go to the FAA's website, the information will be up there.
Okay. Alrighty. Let's see. We got a new member, EC Hydro, and let's see. And we've got Paulus Plain. Gentleman, Boca Chica could be a research center with limited launch, aka Skunk Works. Have some more North Korean dollars. Love from Norway. Okay.
Thanks for the support.
Yeah.
Maybe I could see, the launches in Boca Chica being limited to development and test launches. I guess that could make sense. Um, I'd be interesting to see if that means they want a more operational land-based site at Kennedy Space Center, and that becomes a higher cadence thing,
Uh-huh.
which might make sense because again, it's on a spaceport that already exists. There's already lots of infrastructure surrounding um, noise levels and environmental assessments and all that stuff. Like that's all much better understood at Kennedy Space Center. So maybe that's a thing.
Mhm.
Or maybe it'll be they're really going to lean on those sea launch platforms. I'm not sure. I'd like to know more about what their cadence plan is.
All right, and getting back to our topic currently, Elizabeth Chase said, "When will Starship 20 fly? Do we reckon?" Well, we're
That's a
getting
tricky
closer now that
question.
we have a yeah, of course, yeah, it is a trick question, but now that we have this
So
FAA document out, we at least have a I don't know hope
Hope.
that it could be this year.
yeah, I think what this environmental assessment, the draft being released, does is it improves the odds that they can try it this year. I think 2022 is still the safer bet, because there's a lot of not just regulatory stuff that still has to happen after this,
Mhm.
but there's also technical stuff. Starship 20 and Booster 4 haven't static fired yet,
Yeah.
let alone cryo-proofed or anything like that. And for all you know, one of those static fire attempts results in a RUD, and they have to build another vehicle. Like who knows?
Mhm.
There's a lot of things that have to go right before that happens. So I'm gonna say 2022 is still the safer bet. 2021 is not off the table.
Yeah. Here's another Starship question. Brian Algren says, "How will they disconnect Starship from the crane hoist hooks after stacking on the booster? Lifts don't look tall enough."
They have some really
Um,
long lifts though, don't they?
yeah, I was gonna say I
Yeah.
think they have some really tall lifts.
Yeah. And I don't know, maybe there could be some creative way to reach it from the tower. Could they? I guess they'd have to build something totally new. But yeah, they have some really tall, it's like crazy tall. Like obviously,
Scarily
like
tall.
I wouldn't want to be standing on top of
Nope.
no,
one of them in some wind. Terrible.
I
no. I
think
mean, because
hopefully eventually when they're using the arms on the tower, there doesn't need to be like a disconnect. Like the arms can just release it, and you don't need people to go out and unhook anything. So that
right.
down the road that'll be the plan. But
I think and okay, do can their lifts go up that high? Like once Starship's up there, like the little hooks at the top, could they go that high though? I think the other
uh,
option would be like use another crane. Like I see them do that. Like when they're working on the orbital, the tank farm. Sometimes there's certain places they can't get a lift into, so they'll actually take that crane right there and they'll put like a bucket on the end of the crane and lower
mhm.
them down in between those tanks. So maybe that would be another option to get
Would
them
you
up
need
there.
would you need like a second monster I've forgotten what the name of the crane is. Would you need it?
Tankzilla,
Yeah, whichever one
Franken
is. Yeah.
crane.
Would you need another one of those? Yeah, Franken crane. Would you not need another Franken crane, or could you put like a second crane
It
hook on
it
the
has
end
another
with a
hook on it,
boom on it?
doesn't it?
Could you use that? I'm not a crane expert.
I don't know because I feel like it's not far enough away from the other one because because if you were picking that bucket up from the ground, it'd just be scraping alongside Starship all the way up, towards the top.
Yeah,
So that
we've definitely seen the lifts go all the way up to the point where Super Heavy meets Starship. We saw them do that
right.
when they stacked it for the first time, but they
Hmm.
did not disconnect the crane at that point. They never went that high up to
Yeah.
that point. I don't think. So it's a
They
good
didn't.
question.
That doesn't mean they can't. I just know they didn't that time.
Yeah.
I think this is reminder number 500 that we need someone from Liebherr to come on NSF Live and talk cranes with us. Um, yeah, I mean, we'll wait and see. I don't know.
um, okay, here's one from Brock Bowers. Says, Steve, hey, that's me. May you talk about the speed of Starbase? Is the in-person experience different? Well, okay, yeah. If you are a watcher of the dailies, you know that we typically speed up those videos so that we can pack as much information in there as possible. But it is I mean, from the day I arrived to the day I left, there were changes. Like look at these little. I'm like using my mouse like it works. Like those little tubes right there
Oh,
up there. Like those weren't there when I got there. Like in the tile work on ship 20. Um, you know, they basically, like, they got rid of all the colored tape. They weren't completely done by the time I left. Well, to answer the question, it does seem like it's super fast. There's always, everywhere you look, there's stuff going on. Of course, I got there like Memorial Day or Labor Day weekend, and it did feel like there weren't as many employees on site. But then come Tuesday, it was like it was back to what I experienced the previous trip. Is like everywhere you look, there are projects going on. It's crazy. It's almost hard to decide what to film when you're there, you know,
Hmm.
because there's just so much going on. There's people welding on stuff, and there's, you know, the tile work going on, and there's some people in a people lifter going up underneath ship 20, and you know, back at the production site they're working on the new high bay. That's just it it is and it's really fascinating to watch it in real time. It would be cool to to like, well, the videos are like, I don't know, I've got some like 30-minute videos, just the camera just pointed at the tile work going on, because I knew that we were going to take that and compress it. um but yeah, it is, it does feel like there's just so much going on at all times.
Right.
And I really hope that everybody gets a chance to go out there and see it. You know, it'd be nice if everybody could see it sort of in this phase where there's a lot of stuff still being built, you know, where you might spot something that's like it's the first time that's ever been spotted.
Right.
um let's see, I know there's some other topics we wanted to touch on with Starbase, right? I see, you know, we've got some videos pulled and some photos and stuff. So what else, other than the FAA stuff, what else do we want to touch on there,
I
Thomas?
mean, that was the big thing. They hit a couple other milestones where they rolled out a cryo show. We saw that in the video earlier. So they're still working on the orbital tank farm. Um, Fully stacked another GSE tank, Tank 8. They're really working on, as far as the vehicles go, the big thing has been Starship 20's heat shield, which is getting closer and closer to looking like. I mean, we're not gonna probably get a notice like, by the way, the heat shield is now done. But it's looking really close where they're removing all the markers and stuff like that and patching the little bits of missing tiles and stuff like that. So they're getting really close to finishing that heat shield,
Hmm.
which will which will probably be a sign that they're ready to move into cryogenic proof testing once they've got that vehicle ready to go.
Yeah, I think the
Um,
last thing I saw was it it appears as though the tiles are finished except for where the hooks are, the lifting hooks, right? And I'm guessing that'll be another, you know, folks go up on a lift because they'll have to take those off and then put the tiles, you know, in that place, right?
right.
Where those hooks are at the tip. That, yeah,
Imagine
that's the
adding tiles that high in the air on a full
no.
stacks. It's not a
Yeah,
job I'm doing.
no, no. Um, oh yeah, and there was I don't think we had any actual like storm footage, did we? I know that Tropical Storm Nicholas did
The
impact
beginning of that
the
video has
area.
a little bit of robot footage.
Okay.
Um, and
And I
yeah,
know
luckily, no,
Marion.
doesn't look like there was any major impacts to that, thankfully. But
Yeah.
they did get a bit of storm through Boca Chica earlier this week.
Yep. Um, all right. Is there anything else that
Jeez.
we have not hit that we need to? Because I guess we do have other topics, and we're
If
very
I would
close
just
on
if we want
time.
to wrap up Starship questions, and then we can rapid fire
Okay.
some other smaller news stories.
Okay. Let's see if there's any. See, Marcus wanted to know: does sonic boom cause a problem for a Starship crew?
For the crew on board, no. So basically, the sonic booms. So when a vehicle goes either supersonic or comes back transonic the other direction, is traveling supersonic, um, which is faster than the speed of sound. A shock wave forms at the front of that vehicle, and then that boom propagates in whatever direction the vehicle is traveling. And so that it won't affect anyone on board. In fact, I'm not even sure you can actually hear it. If you can, it's probably pretty muffled. It's a
Hmm.
lot louder for you like on the ground or outside. But the crew on board the vehicle wouldn't have any problems with a sonic boom. Same thing with the astronauts on Crew Dragon and stuff like that.
All right, cool. And as far as like the super chats and I'm sure there's other questions that I just haven't queued up, but as far as the ones I've got queued up, I think we are safe to try to touch on some of these other things, because I know that we had our first Starlink launch from the West Coast.
Yeah, a
And I
little quick
think,
launch
Yeah.
recap I think is in order.
yeah. Yeah, I know Gavin was pretty stoked about of course I Still Love You getting some action over there. And we had Pauline and Jack on the scene taking photos.
Yeah.
So yeah.
So first drone ship landing in the Pacific Ocean in 2 years. I wrote down the number. The last drone ship landing was January 2019. So that has been nearly 2 years now. And a lot's changed since then. 2 years ago, it was with Just Read the Instructions in the Pacific Ocean. Since then, Just Read the Instructions left the Pacific Ocean. It's gone over to the Atlantic, where it's working hard, and they've swapped them over. And now, of course, I Still Love You is over on the Pacific Ocean. There was a beautiful launch. They went straight away, clean, no delays, scrubs, holds. Another stack of Starlink satellites into orbit.
How many was it? It wasn't a full stack of 60, right?
It was 50 something. Do you know?
51.
Thomas? 51.
Yeah, and that's just a result of a couple things. First of all, these satellites are the next generation of satellites, and they have some lasers on board, believe it or not, that are used as optical communications between the satellites themselves. So the satellites may be slightly heavier than the previous generation of satellites. They haven't released a new mass figure for them, so we don't know for sure. But that could potentially make sense. There's also a bit of a performance hit going into a polar orbit. They're launching from Vandenberg, which mitigates that a little bit. But that is another factor where that could affect just how much satellites they can put on a rocket while still recovering that first stage. So that's the reason for the slight change there.
Right. Let's see what else. I'm feeling the feeling the heat of that the clock over there. Like, oh boy. We can go over a little bit, right?
Yeah, we can go over a little bit.
Yeah,
there's a lot of news to talk about this week.
So we see if we can show some shots of the booster returning to the port of Long Beach before we move on.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I think we could manage that.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was good for Jack and Pauline to get their first booster
Yeah.
return in a long time.
Well, they were particularly excited. It's been a long drought over there to see a booster come back. Yeah, there we go. So that's the port of
man.
Long Beach. So SpaceX moved their recovery facility. It used to be next door at the port of Los Angeles, but they recently took over the old Sea Launch facility. Sea Launch being a really old company that had a floating ocean platform and support ship.
Okay, Sea Launch isn't that old.
Oh, yeah, fine. Well, they're not there anymore. That's gone back to Russia now, hasn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah, and SpaceX has taken over their old dock space in the port of Long Beach, and crane fans rejoice. They've built another enormous crane. I held a competition on Twitter to try and name it. I'm not quite sure if we've got a winner
I'm
yet.
in favor of naming it Jack, for the record.
Yeah, that was Chris B's suggestion on Twitter.
Was it?
Jack?
And this is
I've never been over there. I've never even been west of the Rockies, y'all. But
oh man.
So I can tell just from this angle here that they are able to get so much closer than we are over here. I mean, like, it feels like we're pretty close here at the port in Port Canaveral, but we're looking across. I don't know, Gavin, do you know off the top of your head how wide the channel is at Port Canaveral? Like from
I do not. Maybe 40, 50 meters. I actually have never measured it. I'm guessing.
I think it's more than a football field. Whatever football you like. I think it's wider than
the field is the same regardless of which football it is.
Is it?
Yeah.
Oh.
Or just about. I mean, most
it's close.
stadiums over here can host both.
Yeah.
For our round ball and helmet ball fans watching.
Yeah, so it is pretty cool. Like they definitely are able to get pretty close over there.
Yeah, and they
Um,
can produce these shots. So what we can see here is that they're taking the landing legs off. That's something
which
we
is
don't.
surprising.
Yeah, that's something we don't see them do at all anymore. Basically on the East Coast,
But
apart
this
from
is an older booster, though. Do you
yeah.
remember the last couple recoveries with 1049? Did they take the legs off?
Yeah, that is that exactly where I'm going. So they
Okay.
the last time 1049 was in Florida, they did take the legs off, presumably because they were about to ship it to the West Coast for this exact launch. So it did come off
Oh.
then, but apart from then, they haven't really been taking the landing legs off like this. They've been retracting them. Um, as for why they're taking them off on the West Coast, they've always done that. Whether that's because they need to take the landing legs off to transport it back to the Hawthorne factory up the road, I'm
Hmm.
not immediately sure, or if they're planning to take this booster somewhere else. We'll kind of have to wait and see. But the lifting cap they're using on the West Coast doesn't have the ability to retract the landing legs.
Oh.
And for those
They've
that
got the
don't
old
know
round
what I
one,
mean
huh?
by that, the way that leg retraction works on the Falcon 9 is it's all done on the lifting cap. The cap has four like winches that come down, and they literally use wires from the lifting cap to sort of fold the landing legs back up, sort of pull it inwards essentially. But it's all done
Hmm.
through the cap, and you can see in that photo there. There is no
Yeah,
wires
There's
the
or
nothing
one
like
the one
sticking
we
out
have
the sides
here.
yeah,
that can pull
exactly.
the legs up. Yeah.
Yeah, the one we have here at Port Canaveral is like it's a big square thing on top of it. It sticks out past the the outside of the interstage there, whereas this is just a round one that just kind of fits into the interstage, and it's just for
Yeah,
lifting.
it reminds me a lot of before SpaceX started trying to do leg retraction, they had a lifting cap exactly like this in Florida.
Hmm.
So
Yep,
it really reminds me of that.
they may be the same one. Who knows?
Well, yeah, potentially.
I don't know. Yeah, super cool, super happy for them. What else do we have for this launch? Anything that I have omitted or forgotten?
It's just that the second shell of Starlink satellites is underway. That's obviously the point of the mission. More launches from Vandenberg and Cape Canaveral supporting Starlink should be coming up before too long as they continue to grow the constellation, expand where they can provide coverage, stuff like that.
Hmm.
Don't have a schedule for the next one yet from either coast, but they should be coming up soon.
Yeah. Okay, let's you want to touch on these here, the Artemis thing with the Artemis lander. There's been some more money going out to
Yeah, sure. Really quick, there is a little bit of news for the Artemis program. NASA has given out some money to the various human landing system contractors, the companies that were working on crewed landers for the Artemis program to the moon. This money is part of them preparing to onboard future landers, basically. Obviously,
Mhm.
the initial human landing system award was to SpaceX and a version of their Starship vehicle. And so that's still on. This doesn't change any of that. This is about giving companies money to further mature and develop their concepts so that when they can bring on additional landers, because they want to have a couple different designs to work with. So
Mhm.
if one has to get grounded for some reason, or their missions with slightly different requirements from one another, they have different landers to choose from. And so Blue Origin, Lockheed Martin, and Northrop Grumman, all of which are members of a national team that's kind of submitted a combined bid, in total to receive about $95.6 million. That's split up between those three different companies, as you can see. Dynetics was the other human landing system design that was not selected. They received about 40 million. And of course, SpaceX received the least, which makes sense because their design has already been picked. They already received the actual HLS award. So just a
Okay.
little bit more money to help them mature that design and stuff, but
I was
most of
going to
that
ask you
funding will
that.
go through
I was like,
the yeah,
I
most
was
of
gonna,
they'll receive a lot more money through the main human landing system like program. So don't think that SpaceX got like cheated out of a bunch of
snubbed
money
in.
here. Like what they have the best design. Like yeah, that's why they're getting money than the other program. This is
Yeah.
maturing other concepts that they want to onboard later. So
Hmm.
SpaceX gets a lot less money in this particular award. It makes a lot of sense.
So they got enough money to, I don't know, buy some heat tiles or something. It's
Yeah.
just it's like
Oh,
a
and by the
single.
way, $9 million, like that's not a small amount of money, by the way,
No.
but yeah.
um. Okay. Cool. Anything else about that, or shall we
Yeah, that's
move
just
on?
a small development. Obviously, we'll wait and see. I know Blue Origin is still kind of fighting for a human landing system award in the near term. They have until I think November for that to clear out of the way, because right now the human landing system program is kind of on hold because of Blue Origin's legal actions, which is going to delay the Artemis program, by the way. But either way, once that gets cleared out, we'll see a lot more human landing system news, hopefully.
And then we also have some news from Mars. Ingenuity took another flight, right?
It did, and they're getting ready for Flight 14, which should have happened actually yesterday. It takes a day or so for them to receive the data downlink from those kind of flights. But Ingenuity, the little helicopter brought along by the Perseverance Mars rover, continuing to do some flights. And interestingly, this next flight, they are testing basically spinning the rotors a lot faster because as the seasons change on Mars, the atmosphere actually gets less dense, and thus it's harder to generate lift, which is something they hadn't experienced yet and weren't even planning on experiencing because they expected Ingenuity to only operate for a much shorter amount of time. But since it's still working, they're going to keep working on it. And so they're experimenting with that on this next flight, and we'll have to wait and see how the flight went. But that's still going on. And then Perseverance, the rover itself, still doing some sampling, is actually just recently parked in a new spot to do some science on some new rocks, basically.
Cool.
It's collected a couple of samples, which is, of course, its main job there. So the Mars 2020 mission continuing nominally as well.
Yeah, very good. Yeah, and they've got their first sample. Did they get a second sample yet? Because I was
think
over
they've
at
got a pair of
Starbase and I was,
samples
like,
now.
losing track. A pair? Okay.
Yes.
Yeah, very cool. Oh yes. Oh, I'm glad I scrolled down a little further because I forgot all about this. This was the day that I was, or one of the days that I was driving back from Starbase was a pretty big arrival. I had to watch it from Fleet Cam. I pulled over for some lunch and look at this monstrosity.
Yeah,
I
this
had
was
to
at the
tell
very
you, I
beginning
had
of the
no
week,
idea.
and it feels like forever ago because of all the news that came out this week. But
Yeah.
some other Port Canaveral arrivals for a different spaceflight company, not SpaceX.
Yeah, a
that's
bit
right.
of a surprise here that we saw come in. Julia was luckily in the area. This is the transport erector for Blue Origin's New Glenn.
Yep.
It was brought in by barge. Blue Origin has somewhat of a history of shipping in their large components by barge through Port Canaveral. We've seen them bring in their orbital mount and some GSE tanks before. And then earlier in the week, just by random luck, the transport erector showed up. You can see it there. It looks like a big metal truss. It appears to be in several pieces that will be
Yeah, at least two
constructed.
pieces. I'm not
Yeah,
sure.
at least two pieces. Construct. There might be some smaller pieces as well to be like added on that aren't part of the main structure. There was a lot of trussing that's kind of hard to untangle.
Yeah.
But yeah, it showed up at Port Canaveral earlier this week. They tugged it through and it went to the I forgot what the name is. The dock on the Space Force base, not the one down by the I'm
By
completely
the
forgetting what it's
VAB.
called now. Yeah, not that dock.
Not
It's
that
the
one.
it's the
Yeah.
other the dock further up the Banana River by the Space
Okay.
Force base. It has a name. I'm completely blanking on it.
Yeah, and I can't remember it either. Of
Yeah,
course,
you can.
Julia just gave me a map of Kennedy and the Space Force base, and it's not anywhere near me right now. Oh, wait, no, it is. Yes, it is. I wonder if it's on here. I don't know. You can continue. It's going to take me a minute.
Yeah, so you can see at this shot here, it's squeezing its way through the locks down at Port Canaveral. They open up the drawbridge. This is the same lock that the NASA's Pegasus barge goes through when it is shipping SLS parts today, or in the past shuttle components. Yeah, not too much to say more about it at the moment. Just the fact that it showed up. Blue Origin is making progress, and hopefully we'll see them launch soon.
Progress on the ground side of things, at least. We're still waiting for, engines and things. But
One day.
Look, you're focusing on the least important part, Thomas. Okay, and then finally, the last thing that we wanted to touch on was China brought back. Do we call them? Is it taikonauts?
Yeah,
Is that what
taikonauts, or it's the
Taikonauts.
Chinese word for astronaut. Yes.
Okay, yeah, there you go. So they just came home, right?
They did. 3 Chinese taikonauts returning to Earth yesterday. A bit of a sporty landing. It comes back. The Shenzhou vehicle is very similar to the Russian Soyuz. That
Mhm.
descent module comes under one big main parachute, and you can see some winds was carrying it nice, it was a little bit sideways a little bit. Not
Mhm.
entirely unheard of, and they were completely fine. Just looked a little interesting. You can
Yeah,
see
they
some
kind of
retro
rolled, right?
rockets.
Yeah.
Like the parachute kind of drug them like over to their side or something.
Yeah, which interestingly, I don't know if this also applies to Shenzhou. I would bet it does. On Soyuz, sometimes they actually prefer that to happen because it's easier
Mhm.
to get out the side than climb out the top and over once they come back,
Ah,
especially after being in microgravity for, in this case, 3 months.
as long as you
Um,
don't land on the door on the side.
right, yeah. So you always land face
Oh,
down,
I
but if it
guess.
rolls over afterwards, yeah.
Oh, yeah, yeah. You're saying that like the hatch is on the top, they can get out that way. Yeah. So
Right,
that, yeah,
exactly.
that does sound more mo better.
Yeah, so but yeah, the successful and safe return to Earth, that is the first ever crew to the new Chinese space station. And the next crew will be going up on October 13th. So they're not continuously crewing that station just yet,
Hmm.
like the International Space Station does. I think they plan to get there at some point, but they got to expand the station a little bit first. It's only one module. Actually, earlier today, they relocated the Tianzhou 2 cargo spacecraft from one docking port to another. I think they're going to do some propellant transfer testing while there's no crew on board. And then, as early as September 20th, this coming Monday, they will launch another cargo spacecraft called Tianzhou 3. That will be the cargo and science and supplies that the next crew needs. That'll go up, dock to the station, and then they'll launch the next crew in October. And we'll continue working on the new Chinese space station with 3 new crew members.
All right, awesome. Yeah, there for a moment we had 14 people in orbit.
Very briefly with Inspiration4, and then the Chinese crew came back. Yep.
Okay, so we are over on our time, but we're gonna start to wrap up here. I'm gonna hit these super chats, and then we'll see what kind of questions we got here. We'll try to be quick about it. Tennessee Ferry, Falcon Heavy, USS F-40, no earlier than October. Your guys' thoughts on launch date and when do I book my trip to Florida?
So yeah, there was a Space Force presentation that said, by the way, it's USSF 44 to be clear. I don't want to cause any confusion. Um,
Oh,
no earlier than October 9th. That date was like the first time we got any sort of target date, so it's probably not that solid. Wouldn't be surprised if it slips further into October. But that was the last official word we got. So sometime in October, the big thing is don't book travel to Florida for that launch just yet. Wait till if you're going to travel for this launch, I would wait for SpaceX to confirm a launch date. That would be much more firm, or at least until we get a little bit closer.
and also
Booking
what
trips around launches is a sketchy business.
it is, yes. Yeah, launch dates are slippery. Um, if it gets moved back too far, I would think that Crew 3 would take precedence because they're using the same pad, right?
Yes, crew launches generally speaking do. However, I do believe that we would expect this Falcon Heavy mission to go before Crew 3,
Crew
Right.
at least
3 is
currently.
October 31st, isn't it?
Right.
Yeah, as of
So we've
now.
got a couple of weeks. Get it
Okay.
in.
Let's see. Dave Wolf, it would be great to get discussion points from SpaceX to help guide the comments. Talking about the FAA thing. This is
Mhm.
a common tactic in convincing government officials to take a specific action. That's a good point. Yeah, like I don't know what to say. Hey, I'm for it.
Starship good, like
Yeah. Yeah, it's true. And I know what they're talking about. Like I see, I think it's like the Planetary Society, they'll do that. Like they'll do these
Mhm.
these rushes on, going to talk to senators, and it's like, well, if you can't go to DC, here's a template that you can literally just email them this, or you can take this and put it into your own words. But yeah, I see what you're saying there, Dave. Um, let's see. Ryan Hamstra said, I think at this point they just want to get approval and show it's safe. Then it's easier to ask for more launches per year instead of trying 30 for now. Okay, yeah, they're talking about the 5
right.
launches per year thing.
Yeah, and I think I agree with you. I think that is probably the case. I completely agree. Yeah.
Yeah. Musical Wolves saying, what was the NASA lunar demonstration announcement for on the 16th? Confused how it's different from the or lander contract. Yeah, well, we did. Yeah, we got to that. I think Musical Wolves asked this before we got to that one. But I
Yeah,
hope
it's
we
just
answered that
about
question.
maturing other designs so they can have multiple landers in the future was the big difference.
Right. Let's see. Falcon Heavy is a new member, but also would like to know. I saw some pictures of the tracks of a SpaceX branded Liebherr crane in Germany. Is that headed to KSC or Boca Chica? And I think Elon even replied to it. He's like, "Oh yeah, it's our new crane."
Yeah, I would assume Boca Chica. I think it's Kennedy Space Center will get its own equipment at some point, but all the focus is in Texas right now, so I would guess Texas.
Yeah. Okay. Indolus, and then I'm not even going to try your last name. I'm sorry. Is it possible to sit the Dragon capsule on Falcon Heavy and perform a TLI, that's a translunar injection, to do from Earth to Moon and back? Could you basically? I think they're asking, could you use Falcon Heavy to send Dragon around the Moon?
You know, it's funny you say that because at some point there was a program called Gray Dragon that was pretty much just that. At the time, undisclosed customer announced that they wanted to send 2 astronauts on a Crew Dragon to a lunar flyby on Falcon Heavy. Turns out that that was the precursor to the Dear Moon mission, which was then moved to Starship and had a lot more than 2 people on board.
Right.
Simply because the Crew Dragon on Falcon Heavy, like to the moon, you could do it, but you'd have to modify Dragon a lot. You'd only be able to take 2 people, stuff like that. So it just makes more sense to do it on Starship. Yes, if you really needed to, you could probably make that work, but using the Starship system, which is designed for that purpose, just makes a lot more sense.
All right, and just 2 last ones, real simple. EC Hydro coming in just with a buck coming our way to keep the lights on. We appreciate that. And then Jim Cavett says, thanks for another great NSF live. See y'all later. And we are, I think we're going to wrap it up here. And well, first of all, I want to touch again on everybody that donated to the St. Jude Drive, helping out the kids. It was mind blowing. What a cool mission. I'm super stoked because here in about an hour or so, I'm going to head out to probably Jetty Park and see if I can see the Inspiration4 crew coming back. And also we want to thank our members because y'all really help us keep the lights on here and keep all the seals lubricated and the liquid oxygen flowing and whatever. I don't know. But yeah, thanks everybody. And you can become a member and get access to a special Discord full of other members and rocket nerds and have a great time there. And also get some cool emojis and whatnot. And anything else to touch on, or shall we wrap?
I think that covers the week in space news. Always a pleasure to be on NSF Live. Thanks everybody for watching.
Yeah, so I'm Stephen Marr. I'm just a simple photographer. Over here, I have Gav Cornwell, who is one of our fleet experts. And then on my other side, I've had reporter and commentator and many other jobs, Thomas Burghardt. We appreciate y'all watching. See y'all later.
See ya.
We have liftoff. Propulsion continues to be normal.
The chamber pressure looks good. Toggling up. Roger roll, Atlantic.
Water towers can fly!
Tango Delta nominal.
Flight down, feed off. Bring in, feed off.
Yikes. You bet. Concur. We don't need any more of these.